What is up, team? Killchain here, and today we're back on the PTR, literally less than 2 weeks away from our 10.1 patch. And yeah, very exciting times, and school holidays is almost over. The kids are almost back to school. We've had 3 birthdays and Easter and all sorts of craziness, but things are finally settling down, so that is good news, and school starts back next week. Yay! And then obviously 10.1 very close to that. So we've had some myriad of changes, obviously, in terms of the tier sets across a lot of classes, obviously, not just Warrior. But at this point out, we're pretty comfortable in saying that what we've got at the moment, current iteration will most likely be what's going to live because we're so close to 10.1 dropping. So with that in mind, both Fury and Arms have had some shakeups. Arms will be in its own separate video, but Fury is obviously we'll touch on first. So 2-piece, nothing changed there. Rampage increased by 10% damage and 10% crit chance. Happy days, very strong for a 2-piece as well. And it pretty much all plays into the feedback loop of every possible play style of Fury that you could come up with, even the dirty heathen single-minded Fury people. But our 4-piece, if you recall previously, was one, absolutely bonkers, but each individual Rampage strike, of which there are always 4 every cast, was having a chance to build up this stacks. It only stacked up to 4 times, and it allowed you to do this ridiculous 250% increase Bloodthirst at 100% crit chance. It was absolutely bonkers. They've obviously stretched that out a lot now, so we have up to 10 stacks now, and instead of individual strikes of Rampage, it's now Rampage cast as a whole. Each cast of it is considered 1 unit of Rampage rather than the individual strikes that it was originally dealing with. So a bit of a shame, but obviously much more nuance to it now, which I think is sort of at least nice, because we do have to factor in the fact that while the Rampage increasing Bloodthirst damage does stack up to the 10 times of 250% total, you're gonna have the most optimal leaning into where your crit chance sort of soft caps at 100%. So in a perfect scenario, we already have a baseline of crit chance of 20+%. So you should, in theory, never go above 8 stacks, although it can stack up to 10 times, and although that does increase your damage more, those extra 2 stacks could have been 2 stacks that go towards your next Bloodthirst, right? So you want to be trying to get as many Bloodthirsts in as possible to get your Cold Steel Hot Bloods, procs, things like that. So although the damage does increase over that time, it's better to get 2 Bloodthirsts in at half damage, so 125% increased damage rather than the full 250, because both of those will do the exact same amount of damage but generate like more Cold Steel Hot Blood procs, if that makes sense. So in a perfect world, the moment you hit your soft cap of 100%, boom, send it. There should be no reason to run that. And we also have to factor in things like recklessness as well. So in a standard scenario at really low levels of anything ever, because we're not really stacking for crit or anything at this current stage, we have our 24%. We could probably push that to 30%, especially as our gear naturally gets better over the course of the season. 30% unbuffed crit is not unrealistic. And likewise, the cherry on top of that is when we're running with recklessness. That'll also mean we get an extra 20% on that bad boy as well, which is going to push us to around 50% crit chance. With that in mind, we only ever need 5 stacks to guarantee our 100% crit chance, which is what we'll need to guarantee our Cold Steel Hot Blood. Now, originally, a lot of the talent and build loadout was really emphasizing a lot of Bloodthirst play, even potentially looking at Annihilator being one of the better specs, and just completely coming away from Raging Blow entirely. Unfortunately, with the changes, we're very much set in stone with how it functions currently, and you're only just dipping in just minor amounts to pick up your Cold Steel Hot Blood. There are a couple of caveats here. It is exceptionally important to note that with Raging Blow still forming the core part of your entire build, and although you'll be spending Bloodthirst every 5, maybe 6 stacks of your 4-piece bonus, right? Most of your filler is always going to be Raging Blow. For that reason, it is also important to note that we're completely losing our current tier set, which means our current tier set of the extra sudden death procs and all that jazz really limits a lot of that filler sort of rage generation, because we're so used to having ridiculous amounts of execute procs throughout the fight. It's exceptionally noticeable, honestly. The moment you lose the current tier set to get the next one, you really need those Raging Blows to fill that gap. and help generate rage, obviously, to be able to keep pumping your rampage. So with that in mind, hack and slash is now back on the menu as an absolute must take. And to be honest, you kind of almost need raging armaments as well. So in an AoE environment where you still need to pick up meat cleaver, you're most likely going to be pulling out of one vicious contempt into raging armaments, because I promise you, you'll hit those moments where, yeah, it really stings. Just sort of sitting there like a wet noodle, just auto attacking, waiting for a raging blow proc or raging blow charge to just come back to be able to use it, because you don't have enough rage to rampage and you don't have anything to hit, and you can't hit bloodthirst because the whole point is you're trying to hold off on bloodthirst to hit certain caps, right? So definitely having those extra charges on raging blows suddenly becomes absolutely paramount again. In terms of your initial opening and rage, you've got fresh meat back on the menu now as well, where you can pull out of onslaught on overall, pretty most likely what's going to happen there. And in a single target environment, and it is important to note here as well, a lot of the raid is heavy on the single target. You're going to be going into Spear Bastion as you typically do in raiding encounters, whereas on the flip side, you typically go into Thunderous Roar for Mythic Plus, or at least I do. Most people still run Spear, blah, blah, blah. It's a whole debate. But now that Cold Steel Hot Blood is a bit more relevant, yeah, you're going to want to be spreading your Bloodthirst to multiple targets and getting a Cold Steel Hot Blood proc on multiple targets, which means you care more about bleeds again, blah, blah, blah. You've got different avenues of thought on that regard. But when it comes to raiding, pretty stock standard, you're going to want to pick up Spear Bastion in most scenarios. And even more prevalent now because of the fact that 4 to 5 encounters in the new raid of Aberrus, single target. So we're not even going to be running anywhere near as much AoE as we typically did in Vault of the Incarnates, for example. So with that in mind, you will probably see scenarios where you can even dip out of Ravager, maybe going into Onslaught for that reason in a single target environment, and you want to pull out of that as well. No improved Whirlwind or Meat Cleaver because it's obviously just not needed. And then you could maybe pick up Ashen Juggernaut or something like that. Now, in the unlikely event, but still worth mentioning, where Reckless Abandon is still used, again, you're pulling more away from Ravager and things like that for a single target-based spec. And then you still get your Onslaught for your little extra fillers wherever you need it. And you just pull away from Execute entirely, especially given our tier set is obviously changing. We don't get the benefit of the ridiculous sudden death procs, right? And it's not as prevalent because we're not needing to AoE as much. Reckless Abandon could potentially become favorable for single target. The problem with Reckless Abandon is RA sort of challenges your concept of rampage, right? Like, the whole point is you want to be rampaging as much as possible. However, with Reckless Abandon, it's almost incentivizing you to always do something else before you rampage again, because you want to get 2 crushing blows off or 2 bloodbaths off before you rampage again. Bloodbaths are already off the table because the whole point is you want to be saving bloodbath or bloodthirst or when you have enough stacks of your 4 set. And then alternatively, you don't always want to be 2 crushing blows, because although that might be optimal for the RA playstyle, the whole point is if Rampage is available, fucking send it, right? Like, you don't want to be holding on to Rampages unnecessarily, because the more you Rampage, the quicker you can do your big Bloodthirst again. So RA, I think, could potentially be numerically better, but it is at odds with how the tier set works. I think 9 times out of 10, and what will most likely be the better option going forward will be anger management, for obvious reasons, right? But in a single target environment, you might not necessarily need Ravager. The main key here is that Rampage, Onslaught, kind of loses a bit of its oomph, which is why you can afford to probably dip out of it. Although you lose it from your Unbridled Ferocity, you're rampaging so much that you should be fine. You'll typically see that Onslaught isn't as favorable. I mean, in terms of damage, again, who cares? It's not really used for that. It does do very good damage, don't get me wrong, and it's good for rage generation and stuff like that. But for the most part, recklessness is high as it is. Rage generation isn't too bad, where you should feel pretty comfortable. And getting more Ravagers out anyway, that also increases your rage generation whenever it's up, so that's happy days. You get that nice feedback loop of getting ridiculous rage generation whenever you've popped Recklessness and Ravager together. And that, again, feedback straight into anger management, the fact that it reduces the cooldown of Ravager as well. And Ravager gives you the Hurricane, so an extra 30% strength when it's most crucial, when you have all your cooldowns popped and stuff. It's really good, honestly. I think even in a single target environment, most likely you'll still pull Ravager. But it is important to notice that you do have those options available, right? If you're going into Onslaught in a pure single target capacity, then you don't need fresh meat because Tenderize will do all the heavy lifting for you for that regard. If you don't even pick up Tenderize at all because you don't have any concern in terms of enrage uptime and you don't need the stacks for slaughtering strikes for whatever, which you do want, don't get me wrong. The increased damage on that is just always handy and nice, right? So if you didn't pick up Tenderize for whatever reason, then again, you've got that opportunity to maybe go into Odin's Fury or whatever else you need the point. But for the most part, in almost 90% of scenarios, I'll be willing to bet that Ravager will still take the place with anger management. Now, that said, again, I cannot stress this enough, how demonstrably noticeable it is that we lose our current tier set. And you need all possible Raging Blow affecting things, increasing your proc chances, like things like Hack and Slash and the extra charge from Raging Armaments. Absolutely almost mandatory. And the moment you get in there and start feeling it, yeah, you'll know exactly what I mean. So in a scenario where we do need to still run some sort of AoE, so we're picking up Meat Cleaver and stuff still, that is where if Ravager by itself isn't enough in terms of AoE, there might be an encounter where there is AoE, but it's literally just a couple of ads come every minute or something, and you just burst them up, and then that's all you need to worry about. In that case, yeah, save your Ravager for the AoE, you're fine. You don't need Meat Cleaver at that point. But if there's any sense of sustained AoE, and especially when it comes to Mythic Plus and things like that, it is still really important to hold on to Raging Armaments. So the unfortunate reality is we're probably still going to dip out of Ashen Juggernaut. Bit unfortunate, but it's fine. Bloodthirst is performing the role of big execute hits anyway, so not too worried in that front. And you'll probably most likely pull out of one of Vicious Contempt and then throw that into your Meat Cleaver there as well. Just so that way you can still maintain instant enrage on every new mob through fresh meat, as well as you still get your full AoE, sustained AoE rotation that you need, right, for Mythic Plus environments and anytime it is relevant in Raid. Whereas anytime it's not needed, yeah, by all means, you can dip back out, throw your 1 point into Vicious Contempt again, and then maybe pick up Ashen Juggernaut or whatever else you might see fit, given that, yeah, that's how it works. You could even throw it in Sudden Death. Obviously, it's not the greatest chance, and it will feel really... It stings losing the current tier set. I cannot stress that enough. It's ridiculous. But that's how we're pretty much all shaping up. In terms of throughput, obviously, it's still a very capable tier set. Not as life-changing or reaffirming as we were hoping it to be. Still very strong. Let me know what you guys think down below. I think you'll tend to notice that this is sort of going to be the go-to build. That being said, though, by all means, I am no expert, and I'm sure we'll see these sims either confirm or change up and alter whatever we might end up finding is the most optimal way of going forward. And stay tuned. Obviously, we'll have our arms video. Thanks for listening to me dribble shit. Hopefully, you guys get a bit more of a preparation ready for how our warriors are going to look in 10-1. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next video. Peace.